President Biden is slamming the Supreme Court's decision in the Trump immunity case. He condemned the opinion, saying it undermines the rule of law. And this comes as Biden tries to quiet the fallout from his shaky debate performance. But new polling from Hart Research finds that most Biden voters still support him in a head-to-head matchup against former President Donald Trump. CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns is following the very latest from Washington. So this was the big question, continues to be the big question. How will that debate performance impact his support? But there's one thing to say you're a little worried about him, you're not sure if your support is what it used to be. It's another thing to say you're going to vote for the other guy. So what are we learning?
Hey, Emery, good to see you. Well, the fallout from this debate only continues, and especially among Democrats. Yes, you see that polling that was put out there. The campaign put out internal polling showing pretty much a dead heat, although Trump with 1 point ahead advantage. But what's significant there is that they're arguing that the race hasn't changed, but even their own internal polling shows that Trump has the slight edge. What's significant is the polling that CBS put out yesterday that showed these kinds of underlying concerns that Democrats have that they are bringing to the forefront about their nominee. Nearly half of Democratic voters don't think Biden should be the nominee. Vast majorities of voters, including Democrats, have concerns about his mental acuity and fitness for office. Those numbers have grown, negatively for him since the debate. So the head-to-head is one thing. The underlying numbers are another, and important to pay attention to, because this is a campaign that at this point in time is having trouble with their own base, let alone trying to reach voters across the aisle or voters that may not necessarily be inclined to them. They have an issue with their own base that is only exacerbated by the debate performance.
Well, speaking of underlying numbers, the kinds that have dollar signs in front of them, the re-election campaign actually did really well in terms of fundraising for the month. Now, the debate happened closer to the end of the month, so we don't know if the debate's going to have an impact. But what do we know about how the fundraising efforts are going?
Yeah, the campaign is touting this, huge fundraising effort for the past quarter. They say that in the hours leading up to the debate, too, they had kind of record numbers in terms of grassroots funding. There are two important points to note here, however. One is that Donald Trump had been catching up to the Biden campaign in terms of fundraising, especially after the convictions in New York. He saw a wave of grassroots fundraising and big dollar donors to his campaign. So the Biden campaign needs this to remain competitive. The other thing to consider, too, is that, all of this information being put out by the campaign, fundraising, poll numbers, that still hasn't, tamped down on the concerns coming from Democrats. Just this morning, one moderate Democrat in the House, raised concerns about Biden's candidacy, Mike Quigley, who's a Democrat from Illinois. Yesterday, Sheldon Whitehouse, a Democrat from Rhode Island, senator, said that he still needs assurances from the campaign, essentially, that the debate performance was a one-off and not just how the president is these days. So this is an effort by the campaign to really speak to their Democratic base to try to reassure them that things are okay. But we're seeing that lawmakers are expressing that they just aren't convinced yet.
And then in regards to the Supreme Court's decision, we heard the president say that this is an attack on the rule of law and all that sort of stuff. So House Speaker Mike Johnson was actually on Fox News last night. And here's what he had to say about President Biden's warning about the power of the presidency following the Supreme Court's immunity decision.
The president has been trying to undermine our legal system. When it doesn't work the way they planned it, the way they designed it, when the law gets in the way of what they're trying to do, now he's trying to undermine the Supreme Court itself. It truly is an unprecedented moment in American history.
So we heard almost immediately how Democrats were interpreting the Supreme Court decision. Aside from celebrating, which is what Donald Trump kind of put out in a post, what are we hearing from the Trump campaign now on this?
Well, the Trump campaign is declaring victory on this decision. And even in a social media post, a Truth Social post, Donald Trump said essentially that this decision, was bigger than many had expected in terms of what the ruling was. What's interesting here is that, Democrats, this was a huge way for Democrats yesterday to really try to galvanize their base of support, because Democrats were making the argument not only that this will prolong the Jack Smith's case against Donald Trump and pretty much not allow voters to weigh in the election, before this wraps up, or after this wraps up, I should say. But they're also making the argument that, if you vote for Trump, that also, what does this mean for extended powers while he's in office? So, going back to our previous conversation, Democrats are trying to use this to galvanize their base of support. And that kind of speaks to the message coming from Democrats at this point right now, which is, okay, you may have some issues with our candidate, but look at the other guy and what will happen if he is able to win the presidency again and then have these essentially expanded powers. The Republicans, however, as you mentioned, or as you showed from Johnson, they're not only celebrating this, but using it to go after Biden, who, of course, criticized the court after the ruling on student loans.
All right, Caitlin, thank you.